Funding for this video is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. Hello and happy 2023, cheers! If you're new here, hi, my name is Allie. If you're old here, also hi, my name is still Allie. In the year of 2022, I managed to read a little over 150 books, and today we are going to discuss my top tier books from that list. I've whittled it down to 10 honorable mentions, and then finally a top 5 list. Under no circumstances is this an objective list. I can totally see how some folks might not vibe with my favorite books, because we all like different things, and that's the beauty of it, which leads us to our 3 disclaimers that we love to cover before videos like this. And those 3 things are, 1, do not compare yourself to anyone but you in all realms of life, but especially when it comes to books. If you're reading, you're winning. The second one is what we kind of already mentioned. We all search for different things when we pick up a book. That's the beauty of it. It's never a personal attack. And 3, please check any and all content warnings that you may need to look out for. If you have any sensitivities, there's no shame in that. Take care of yourself. So the breakdown of this video is simple. We're gonna go through 10 honorable mentions, 10 books that stood out from the rest of that 150 plus, and then a final top 5. But each book of the 15 will have some quotes featured, so it kind of feels like you're in a bookshop, you're getting a taste for the writing and seeing if it's for you. Okay, let's dive right in. The list of 10 books that I found beautiful and breathtaking and powerful and worthy of an honorable mention are as follows. Within no particular order, the first category is my favorite character study of 2022, and that is without a doubt The 5 Wounds by Kirsten Valdez-Quaid. This is death then, a brief spot of light on earth extinguished, a rippling point of energy swept clear, a kiss, a song, the warm circle of a stranger's arms, these things and others, the whole crush of memory and hope, the constant babble of the mind, everything that composes a person, gone. So this book bounces between 3 characters that are all related and are living under one roof. We have an alcoholic father who is trying his best, his teen daughter who's pregnant, and also his aging mother. It would be a crime to not mention this book in this video because this is the most human book I've ever had the pleasure of reading. All of our characters are so reasonably and understandably flawed in such a relatable and wonderful way. And also this peek into their lives was told so poetically. We cover grief, the complexities of living with unideal family dynamics, questioning one's sexuality, grappling with the want and need to do better as a person, and the guilt that comes alongside not meeting that betterment. Kirsten Valdez-Quaid is just such a talented writer. I will be reading anything else that this author puts out. This is just one of those books that forced me to slow down, and I adored every word of it. Angel had sort of believed that death, the death of someone essential and life-defining, meant the end of everything. But here she is, mashing banana with a fork, loading the dishwasher. Here she is doing something as mundane and necessary as choosing from among the bottles lined up along the edge of the bathtub and shampooing her hair. This heartache is so much larger than anything she's felt. Angel had no idea that the world could hold ache like this, just as before Connor was born, she had no idea it could hold such love. The next category in the list of honorable mentions will be literary fiction, and my pick for this category is Pure Color by Shayla Hedy. And why not? Happiness was not meant to be ours. The love we imagined would never be ours. Work that could occupy our hearts and minds forever. This also was not meant to be ours. We would never make the money we hoped we would make. Nothing would be as we hoped it would be. Here in the first draft of existence, people were finally beginning to catch on. Our rage made perfect sense. This book has very similar energy to Pew by Catherine Lacey, which was a 5-star read for me last year, in the sense that it's written in just such a fresh, funky way, and it really takes the standard method of storytelling and flips it on its head. I picked up this book immediately after hearing one sentence about it, and that is that the protagonist gets lost in a leaf, so I won't tell you too much aside from that because I felt like that was a great jumping off point. This was just one of those books that couldn't leave my brain, and I really can't explain why. I just woke up the next morning wishing that I had more. Almost like there was a hole in my life where a person would be. Like I missed it. It's so strange. It's basically plotless. It's so confusing. So I totally understand how this isn't for everybody, but for some reason, it was very much for me. There's just something special here that I don't have a name for, but it's on the tip of my tongue, so I'm gonna keep chasing it. Like I said, I read a lot this year, and this one I read more so in the beginning, and it still sticks out to me to this day. Later, acquiring things would become more complicated and would leave her dissatisfied, confused, and wanting even more. But having the lamp didn't lead her to wanting more lamps. It led only to the pleasure of having this lamp. And she loved her meager little existence, which was entirely her own. Next, we do have an honorable mention category for best graphic novel. There are 2 that sit in the top 5, but we need to raise a toast to the creator that sealed my love for this genre this year. So let's give a round of applause to Tillie Walden, but specifically On a Sunbeam. This one follows a girl who joins a spaceship crew whose job is to restore damaged artifacts across the galaxy. Our protagonist hopes that throughout these adventures, she'll be able to find her long-lost girlfriend she never got to say goodbye to. I've read 4 graphic novels from this creator this year alone due to how much this one specifically made me feel. I'm just so impressed with how she tells stories stories. So impressed with how she decorates a page. I have no idea how she manages to write such a high stakes but slow and relaxing story. The use of color in this is absolutely breathtaking. I am genuinely at a loss for words on her ability to make us as readers so effortlessly connected to the characters in just a blink of an eye. So honorable mention to Tillie Walden as a whole, truly, but especially this one. The next category is an honorable mention for best young adult fiction. Now, I've read quite a handful of impeccable YA books this year, which leaves me to believe that the younger generations are in good hands, but there's one that stood out to me more than the rest, and it is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow by Zulfa Katoe. In a historic city plagued by bombs, life has persisted. I see it in the green vines waking up from their winter slumber, squirming through the rubble, daffodils blooming, their petals opening bashfully. I see it in Layla, who smiles more now that I do. When I see these subtle signs of life on my way to the hospital, my heart expands. This is just a top tier book in general, in my opinion. If you're oftentimes turned off by YA, or if you're intimidated by historical fiction, I still urge you to pick this book up. It follows a young woman named Salama, who is a pharmacy student quickly turned surgeon as the revolution in Syria unfolds around her. She and her pregnant sister-in-law are grappling with the conflict over whether the two of them should stay in their home country despite its dangers, or take the risk in fleeing to safety and starting over. This book is the saddest book I've ever read. It's the most harrowing, it's the most heartbreaking, but most importantly, it's the most hopeful book as well. While exploring themes like the meaning of home, whether that be the soil beneath your feet or the soul surrounding you, it also shines light on the power and importance of finding happiness amongst the figurative or literal rubble in your life. Through its gorgeous prose and formidable characters, this book reminds readers that being a human and feeling the range of experiences that are offered to us is a blessing in and of itself, that the grimy, less glamorous emotions like fear or guilt are useful tools in survival. It's educational and exposes current horrors that exist on our planet right now. So of course it's crucial reading in my opinion. I think it's good that we stay informed, but also I think it's good that you take care of yourself. I wouldn't recommend reading this in one sitting like I did, but I truly couldn't help it. It's just that good. I want you to hold on to that. No matter what happens, you remember that this world is more than the agony it contains. We can have happiness, Salama. Maybe it doesn't come in a cookie cutter format, but we will take the fragments and we will rebuild it. Promise me you'll look for the joy. She smiles sadly. The memories are sweeter that way. The next book on the list is on the popular side, but in my opinion, it's popular for a good reason, and that is my honorable mention for contemporary fiction, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. To allow yourself to play with another person is no small risk. It means allowing yourself to be open, to be exposed, to be hurt. There is no more intimate act than play. This is a slow-paced yet chronically readable story that follows two characters named Sam and Sadie, who became friends under unideal circumstances in their childhood, but their lives remain entwined throughout adulthood. This one spans across a few decades, and so we get to experience such an intimate portrayal on the intricacies of friendship, all within the video game developing world. To me, this book was just so realistic as far as human connection is concerned, but what especially stuck out to me, and of course I'm biased, is the representation of chronic pain and chronic illness within this one. I especially connected with Sam using escapism to cope with the pains of having a body that seems to be against you each and every day. Sometimes I would be in so much pain. The only thing that kept me from wanting to die was the fact that I could leave my body and be in a body that worked perfectly for a while. Better than perfectly, actually, with a set of problems that were not my own. Even though this may not be a flawless read, I think that the ending fizzled out just a little bit. This one still deserves all the hype that it has, and I think it's still really worth the read. I just felt as if I were home while I read this one. I craved creativity after I closed it, and I just ended it feeling so much less alone thanks to the character of Sam and how he so vulnerably shared his suffering with the reader. I loved it. I'm also a sucker for books that hold the theme of being small and insignificant, and that being an inherently good thing. There's no game without the NPCs, you tell him. There's just some bullshit hero wandering around with no one to talk to and nothing to do. One thing that I'm just so grateful to be able to have experienced and discovered in 2022 was the genre cozy fantasy. Another spoiler, there are two in the top 5, but it just didn't feel right to not include this honorable mention. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. I was just thinking that you don't have to forget who you were, because that's what brought you here. Things don't have to stay as they started out as. Now this one just welcomed me into the genre so warmly, but it also reinforced a reading preference that I only really understood this year, and that is celebrating mundanity, which honestly took me by surprise that it took this long to figure that out, because that's what we do on this channel. But I digress. This one follows an orc who decides to leave her adventuring life behind and open up a cafe. Each chapter shows a new step in this project, and some of the biggest stakes include, oh no, this specific regular customer has specific dietary restrictions. Who has the best handwriting to make the best chalk menu? I wonder where the nearest personified rat person is that can make baked treats to sell. It's divine, it's low stakes, it's high fantasy. It's so relaxing to watch a stinky stable transform into this cozy cafe. You could really smell the roasted beans. You could almost taste the baked cardamom. It really just takes you there. With the sweet sapphic undertones and magical elements, the vibes were immaculate. I would kill for this to be a graphic novel, but even so, I just love a book that plays the movie in my head without any effort, and this book did that. So much like every other book on this list, I thank this one for having the ability to slow me down and just remind me me why I love reading, which is stimulating my imagination while being as cozy as possible. This one feels like warm in bookish form. The combined aromas of hot cinnamon, ground coffee, and sweet cardamom intoxicated her, and as she brewed and smiled and served and chatted, a deep contentment welled up. It was a glowing warmth she'd never experienced before, and she liked it. She liked it a great deal. I will now be creating my own category for honorable mentions that isn't necessarily a genre. It's just gonna be book that made me cry. Because as some of you know, I've been reading quite excessively for a few years now, and only one book has made me cry, and that is Crying in H. Mart. The book I'm gonna mention right now is not one that had me sobbing in inconsolable pain, but rather shedding tears over how beautiful it was, and that is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. At the end of the day, whether one returns to the past or travels to the future, the present doesn't change. Now, I hesitated picking this book up because so many people online were saying they didn't like it, they thought it was just okay, it's a mid book, and so I wanted to include this for two reasons. The first one, obviously, it made my eyes wet, but the second one is to remind you to not let people's opinions online influence your reading choices too much, because if I had listened to all those opinions, I would have never found this incredible, immaculate, emotionally moving, heartbreaking, yet heart-restoring story. What I loved so much about this book was how it celebrated the many ways that human beings can be connected and love one another. It was just so pure. It made me grateful to be a Homo sapien, which is very difficult to do. This story takes place within the confines of a Japanese cafe, which allows a person to go back in time and relive a small memory that unfolded within it. So not only is it such a unique and creative concept, but it's so slow and it's so beautiful. It has an anthological feel. Each chapter follows a different character who wants to go back in time for their own personal reasons, and yet they're all entwined. Everything's connected so geniusly, in my opinion, which just made it so readable. It just came full circle. I'm so impressed with this. Water flows from high places to low places. That is the nature of gravity. Emotions also seem to act according to gravity. When in the presence of someone with whom you have a bond and to whom you have entrusted your feelings, it is hard to lie and get away with it. The truth just wants to come flowing out. Now, I read a handful of children's books last year, but only one of them made it to my favorite shelf. So yes, now we have entered books that earned real estate on my favorite shelf. Part of the list. The first one being The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I don't speak French, I'm so sorry. I live in Flanders, we speak Dutch here. Precisely, said the fox. To me, you are still only a small boy, just like 100,000 other small boys. And I have no need for you, and you in turn have no need for me. To you, I'm just a fox, like 100,000 other foxes. But if you tame me, then we shall need each other. To me, you shall be unique in the world. To you, I shall be unique in the world. Yet another book that tells us that we are small and insignificant, and by the Zeus, is that a great thing? I cannot believe that it took me this long to read this story. I honestly think that I was afraid of it because it's a classic, but it's everything that I love in a story. It's from a child's perspective. There's a lot of magic. We're swimming in whimsy. But most importantly, we explore philosophical concepts in a very accessible way. This is another thing that's present in a lot of these books. All of this unfolds on the little prince's adventure as he bops across various planets, learning some life lessons. I think what made me especially connect to this one was the fact that the prince felt very alien to all of these concepts that he was learning about. Feeling very disconnected and confused from human wiles is something that I often feel. It's very frequent that I don't get or connect to the world and its rules around me, and so I appreciated this book making that feeling very relatable to everybody. So yes, I loved the point of view, but I also loved how honest it was, and I appreciated the book's simplicity, its shortness, the art. No wonder it's a classic. Goodbye, said the fox. Now here's my secret. Very simply, you can only see things clearly with your heart. What is essential is invisible to the eye. This next book gets its own special category that isn't necessarily a genre, because after receiving my autism diagnosis earlier this year, I've been on the hunt for books that feature neurodivergent or neurodivergent coded characters. So my favorite autistic coded book of the year was Miss I Sandwich by Miko Kawakami. I want to tell her I've just had curry for dinner too, but I can't find the right moment and I end up not saying anything. This is such a short read, and I honestly feel like that is one of its greatest strengths. It really respects your time. We follow a young autistic coded boy who becomes completely enamored with the lady who makes sandwiches at his local grocery store. Obviously, to no surprise, I felt very connected and understood to this character, but I also loved and was quite surprised by the friendship that's featured within it. I think it's very difficult and rarely done, let alone correctly, to feature people with disabilities in a way that shows them not lesser than, but just different, because that's the reality of it. There's one quote specifically that really solidified it, left me with no questions as to whether this was a favorite book or not, and that is, but there's loads of hard stuff in life, and maybe when we're grown-ups, there's going to be tons more hard stuff to deal with, and when that happens, I'm going to tell myself I can't give in or freeze up and get discouraged and do nothing. I have to believe that. So again, so slow, so simple, but it got through to me in a really specific spot as well. If you loved Convenience Store Woman by Sayaka Murata, which is a book that also sits on my favorite shelf, I think that you will love this book. Now, I read a pretty decent amount of nonfiction this year. I do love love me some learning, but there's one book in the nonfiction category that really stuck out to me, and that is Past: The Origins of Our Discontents by Isabel Wilkerson. Many people may rightly say, I had nothing to do with how this all started. I have nothing to do with the sins of the past. My ancestors never attacked indigenous people, never owned slaves. And yes, not one of us was here when this house was built. Our immediate ancestors may have had nothing to do with it, but here we are, the current occupants of a property with stress cracks and bowed walls and fissures built into the foundation. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now. And any further deterioration is, in fact, on our hands. This one is so special, not only because it covers such crucial detail, it's chock full of information, but it's told in such an accessible and readable way, which I just think is fucking awesome. Because people are often so intimidated by nonfiction, and I totally get why, but I feel like if you are one of those folks, you will still be able to connect to and read this one and learn so much. And I totally recommend that you do, because it clearly identifies and illustrates the racial hierarchy in the United States and calls it what it is, a caste system. Wilkerson uses poignant examples and powerful prose to display this ever-present yet invisible ranking system that influences everyday life. Her 8 pillars that support this thesis are so clearly laid out. So again, like I said, it makes this book so easy to follow. Plus, there's just such impeccable writing. I couldn't urge you to read this one more. Like, as if that first quote wasn't enough. In our era, it is not enough to be tolerant. You tolerate mosquitoes in the summer, a idle in an engine, the gray slush that collects at the crosswalk in winter. You tolerate what you would rather not have to deal with and wish would go away. It is no honor to be tolerated. Every spiritual tradition says, love thy neighbor as yourself, not tolerate them. Ooh, okay, we did it. Those were the honorable mentions. We have officially hit the top 5 books out of 150 plus books from 2022. Number 5 being Tomb of Sand by Gitanjali Shree. Within the first paragraph that starts this book, it says, once you've got women and a border, a story can write itself. Even women on their own are enough. Women are stories in themselves, full of stirrings and whisperings that float on the wind, that bend with each blade of grass. Now, I fully recognize that this book is a bit of a challenge, not only in length, but also in prose. However, I encourage anyone who might read this to tackle it like you would a nonfiction. And that is to pick up what you can, pocket what you love, and remember there's no test afterwards. This one is about a family, but we mostly follow the elderly mother within that family who falls into a pretty deep depression after the death of her husband. She then befriends a trans woman, and the two of them go on this journey to Pakistan in order to face their traumas surrounding the partition split together. Often our author goes off on these eloquent yet seemingly nonsensical tangents that are very reminiscent of sitting down with a grandparent as they tell you a story, but then they get a little lost in reliving it. Neither of you really know what the plot is anymore, but you're still hanging on to each precious word. The theme of going wherever poverty takes you, I think, is so powerful and important. The perfectly unhinged yet profound rant to the immigration officers towards the end of this book had me fist bumping alone in my room to myself. This is just a portion of it. Fools, if you cut a border through a heart, you don't call it a border, you call it a wound. Asses, a border stops nothing. It is a bridge between two connected parts. A border is a horizon where two worlds meet. A border, gentlemen, is for crossing. I wish we had more stories featuring older protagonists. It's such an important point of view. The power of reading is to be able to connect and empathize with everybody. So I think we should be featuring everybody more. This was so impressive and strange and challenging and beautiful and just truly unlike anything else I've ever read. I'm so grateful it was translated. Even though I had a hard time, I still wanted to flip back to the first page and start reading it again immediately after finishing it. It really was just that good. This too must be a quality of friendship forged in old age, and with whomever it is forged, be it human or jinn or animal. One feels pleasure only in that friend's company, and even after that company no longer remains, the pleasure lives on. Number 4 in the top 5 list is The Shadows by Zabu and Hippolyte. Oh my gosh, if you want to talk about a book that left me completely speechless and covered my body in chills, then let's talk about this one. This is a graphic novel story that is just under 200 pages and employs some of the most incredible illustrations my eyes have ever had the pleasure of seeing, and it explores the many hurdles one has to encounter in order to flee a dangerous situation to create a new life of what seems like safety. But of course, naturally, there lies jeopardy in the journey and insecurity in the settling. The moral ambiguity that surrounds the actions that one may need to take in order to survive were absolutely gut-wrenching. The holes and flaws within our system that welcomes, or rather doesn't welcome, people who need our help the most is absolutely heartbreaking. The themes surrounding the power of truth and our own personal narrative that shines through the resilience of each and every character is it's so good. The strength in the story, the magic of these pages, strong character connections, all with a small sprinkle of capitalist critique. It just offers so much, and it was so uniquely done. Right after closing it, I had no choice but to sit there in silence and just process what I read. And then I immediately turned to my partner, put the book in his lap, and urged him to read it immediately, which he did. And so now I turn to you and implore you to do the same. You have to read this. Please read this. Coming up on number 3 of the list, also in second place for best cozy fantasy ever, is the entire Tea Dragon Society trilogy. There are 3 short graphic novels. This is not the first time in which I will be counting more than one book as one place, but it counts as one reading experience. It's a shorter reading experience. Trust me on this. Just because something comes easily to you does not mean it has no value. You find it effortless because you love it, and that is why it is your gift. This trilogy is just everything that I want, everything that I need, and everything that I love about life, and also books, and just everything. I love everything about it. You like cozy fantasy? Look no further. You want to get into graphic novels, but most of the ones that you find are targeted towards a very specific demographic that you do not sit in, and you're just looking for something slower, and softer, and sweeter, and less action, and less over-sexualized characters. Look no further. This trilogy takes place in a beautiful, nature-filled world where these little dragons grow tea leaves on their body, so they're technically flavored dragons. They're flavored dragons. All 3 of them feature my favorite themes, which I love to pocket and carry with me throughout each and every day. And that is to enjoy life's simple pleasures, celebrating mundanity, making peace in the sea of uncertainty that is life, and the power of putting care and love into the things you love and care about. This gentle journey forged by friendship comforted parts of me that I didn't even realize were still hurting. All 3 of these soothed sections of my soul that yearned for softness. Genuinely one of the best and most beautiful things I've ever read. These books are comfort incarnate. Perhaps passion takes many forms. Perhaps it becomes quiet and tired and needs time to rest. Sitting in second place, the runner-up for best book of 2022 is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. If one tree fruits, they all fruit. There are no soloists. Not one tree in a grove, but the whole grove. Not one grove in the forest, but every grove. All across the country and all across the state, the trees act not as individuals, but somehow as a collective. Exactly how they do this, we don't yet know, but what we see is the power of unity. What happens to one happens to us all. We can starve together or feast together. All flourishing is mutual. We read this for the Pocket Pages book club in February, which is this channel's book club, where we read something within the first 3 weeks of every month and then discuss on Discord in the last week of every month, so there's no way to miss out. It's $1 a month. Join us if you'd like. I'm just so stoked that 2 books that we read together last year made it to this top list. The first one being The 5 Wounds that we discussed earlier, but this one is my runner-up for best book, and so I was so happy that we got to discuss it. I'm so glad that I didn't have to experience this alone. I will, hands down, be reading everything that Kimmerer ever writes, ever. We are reading her other book, Gathering Moss, in February for the book club as a sort of anniversary celebration of reading this one, and I'm so stoked because this is just such a gorgeous collection of nature-centered essays written by our author, who is an Indigenous woman, an ecologist, a decorated professor, and what that means is that everything she writes has this beautiful, perfect balance, which weaves together both spiritual appreciation and scientific fact. So this leaves the reader inspired to change their life, to live more in tune with nature, and it's just some of the most magnificent and astonishing writing. We've said this a few times. Every book on this list does this, sure, but holy smokes, if you want to slow down, this is the book for you. If you'd like another example, Kimmerer shares this story when some students spend some time with an Ojibwe family and they return keen on fixing the way they do things in order to collect every grain of rice, because sometimes some of the rice would fall in the lake or they would just drop it. His hosts listened respectfully, then said, yes, we could get more that way, but it's got to seed itself for next year, and what we leave behind is not wasted. You know, we're not the only ones who like rice. Do you think the ducks would stop here if we took it all? Our teachings tell us to never take more than half. This one left me with the feeling that you get after consuming a delicious, hearty meal. I was full of such loving and nourishing words that left me feeling good. It just left me feeling good. It had me encountering emotions over some of the most seemingly smallest things, nearly weeping over strawberries, almost crying over pecans, because she shows us the true enormity of these things. It's educational, it's captivating, it's fascinating, it's moving, it's required reading. It's such a simple thing, but we all know the power of gratitude to incite a cycle of reciprocity. If my girls run out the door with lunch in hand, without a thanks mama, I confess I get to feeling a tad miserly with my time and energy. But when I get a hug of appreciation, I want to stay up late to bake cookies for tomorrow's lunch bag. We know that appreciation begets abundance. Why should it not be so for Mother Earth, who packs us a lunch every single day? And finally, coming in to fill the #1 spot, the top book of my 2022 reading out of 150 plus books is The Monk and the Robot Duology by Becky Chambers. So, a Psalm for the Wild Built and a Prayer for the Crowned Shy. You don't have to have a reason to be tired. You don't have to earn rest or comfort. You're allowed to just be. I say that wherever I go. Now I count these as one book because still both of them together are shy of 300 pages. So it truly is one full reading experience getting both. And in order to reap all the benefits, you need to read both because you deserve the full comfort, friendship, and philosophy that these pages have to offer you. The first one is undeniably still cozy and soft, but it's more so there to get you acquainted with the characters and with the world, much like any start to a book would be. And then you're raring and ready to go for the second one, which gives you everything that you wanted more of in this one, which are heartwarming conversations between our two protagonists. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So these are sort of a sci-fi steampunky genre meets cozy fantasy that takes place in a distant future where all of the AI or robots have separated themselves from the humans and now live in the forest. And our protagonist Dex is a tea monk who is just trying to find their place in the world. And as they head out to try and find that answer for themselves, they run into Moscap, a robot who is on its way to ask the humans what they need. So this unlikely but necessary pair join forces, go on a very slow adventure, and the most wholesome friendship blossoms. And the conversations that these two share are, and this is a term we've said a few times, but still philosophically accessible. It nourishes your existential anxiety. Here's another example. It is enough to exist in the world and marvel at it. You don't need to justify that or earn it. You're allowed to just live. That is all most animals do. So again, we're here being reminded that being small and insignificant is a gift in and of itself. That life is here for us to just do our best and enjoy what we can. You know that drawing online where two people are on a bus and one of them's like, life has no meaning, and then the other one's like, life has no meaning? I firmly believe in the latter. I really just find a serious sense of hope and comfort in the fact that we're just here to survive. And that's it. And these books are that belief in book form. It has the feel of a Studio Ghibli movie with all of its quiet and slow scenes, the exploration of humanness through celebrating mundanity and tackling big life questions with seemingly simple or obvious answers that were of course there the whole time, but they don't really become that obvious or come to light as clearly as they needed to be without the power of friendship. Both of these, in my opinion, just say so much without having to say much at all about what it means to be human, morality, friendship, how to lead a meaningful life, how to slow down and enjoy what you can, and again with a little sprinkle of capitalism critique, which is everything that I look for in a book. Not only do these have me giggling sometimes, I really related to Moscap, especially with that similar POV to the Little Prince of observing human nature and being confused by some of their rules. It just calmed and comforted me so much. This reminded me that I'm doing fine and it's going to be fine. What if that is enough for now? What if we're both trying to answer something much too big before we've answered the small thing we should have started with? What if it's enough to just be? What if it's enough to just be? And there you have it. Those were my top 5 books of 2022 with some honorable mentions sprinkled in there as well. I had such a great reading year. I really feel like I'm starting to find exactly what my heart and soul need. You know what I mean? But now I ask you what your favorite books of 2022 were. I would truly, genuinely love to know. We're sitting in front of my TBR shelf right now and it is this long thanks to viewers like you and your comments. Feel free to write as much as you want. Honestly, I check my comments every day. I would just love to know which books spoke to you and why. So please let me know. I just hope you're having a great start to your new year, whether you're a resolutions person or a I'm just surviving person or both. I'm definitely both. I hope you're happy. I hope you're comfortable. I hope you're resting. I hope you're having patience with yourself. Thank you for watching me read books and talk about them on the internet.com. Thank you to everyone on Patreon who make it possible for me to read books and talk about them on the internet.com. And as always, thank you for clicking, thank you for caring, and thank you for being nice. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.